Media Evaluation by Hannah Bennett. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? If I were to have to define the meaning of conventions, I would say that it is a formula, rule, or pattern which ultimately leads the targeted audience into believing what is being said in the magazine. I looked at the cover and reader profile of NME and saw that the main focus was on males and females were left to kind of slot in where they could. I wanted to keep to a similar music genre in my magazine, but stretch it out a bit to allow a slightly different audience to be interested. I challenged the conventions of real media products in the sense that my aim was to focus on the female side of the audience that NME had forgotten. To make my magazine appeal to females, I had to take on a chatty, relaxed, and friendly persona much like many women gossip in fashion magazines. I also feel that I developed forms and conventions of real media products as my model on the front is not 100% British. The majority of magazines present their acts as being English, British, as this is what relates to the majority of the population. This is only a small shift of position, but I think that it opens a fresh outlook and sets my magazine apart from the others. How does your media product present particular social groups? When we are asked to think of social groups, people suddenly become very narrow-minded. Magazines show us the way to be on a friendly guidance level. Women are unequally shown in music magazines, and I have tried to make my magazine more female-based. Media's view on women is that they are often focused on appearance, and the look of magazines, guidance implied, tips on how to be. I think that the main issue is that women that do not want this from magazines are often forgotten about and are left to slot into NME even though it is a male-based magazine. My magazine looks for that gap in the market, women in search of a magazine which is more female-based than male, although males can slot in as well. I wanted to produce a magazine to help balance out the inequalities of male and female in the music magazine industry. Of all the males I interviewed, 30% said that my magazine would appeal to males. And of the females interviewed, all but 2 said the same. The media's view on youth is also very narrow-minded. The assumptions are made that younger people look to magazines for a role model and a way to be. When asked if they look to magazine for a role model, 70% of the young people I interviewed said no. However, although my results suggest otherwise, younger people are undoubtedly influenced by what they see in magazines. I believe that the majority of young people look for a fun and informative magazine. 80% agreed. Furthermore, in changing my approach to younger people, I hope to break some of the negative connotations often attached. And often music magazines play up to these negative connotations through an aggressive appearance and mode of address. It seems that there is a vicious cycle for media. It is feeding its own invention of aggression in youth and are making money out of their position of power. This leaves us with a forgotten slot in the market which I intended to tap into. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why? I think that the kind of media institution which would distribute my product would be smaller and independent, as my target audience is not as large as that of NME. Independent firms would be more focused on interesting a minority of a population, similar to the Big Cheese. My magazine is going to be available in selected music stores for £2 and also available for subscription online or by post for the discounted price of £1.50 including free postage, to encourage people to become members of the miniature world that my magazine creates. This is similar to many magazines which do not fit into mainstream buyers' expectations, such as specialist magazines. Who would be the audience for your media product? My target audience are mostly female. However, I am not secluding my magazine to only females, as I would like to keep it quite open. Majority ages from 16 to 25. People who are interested in creative subjects like English language, art, drama and dance. They are also likely to be studying these at a level or further education. Lead an active lifestyle in many aspects. It is a music-driven community who make it a priority to attend the latest gigs and festivals. How did you attract/address the audience? To attract an audience for anything, you need to be able to relate to them and show similarities in the thing you are promoting and their interests. Without this similarity, there will be no connection with your audience. This is the part in the media that is strongly linked to psychology and people's subconscious attitude towards the look of a magazine. In order to interest certain people, research into their likes need to be done. For my magazine, I gave out a number of surveys to people I thought would be likely to read my magazine and saw what they thought made a good magazine. Magazines independently create subcultures in the loyalty of readers. Magazines directly impact readers' ideology and cause them to act in a certain way. In order to connect with the readers on such a personal level, I thought that taking into consideration my target audience, it would be most effective if my mode of address was on a level, as a friend giving advice. This way the magazine feels more relaxed, than the readers are not been directly told what to do but are given a direction and suggestions as guidance. The photograph on the front cover is also a vital tool in attracting your audience. Eye contact is usually the best method in grabbing their attention. Ensuring that your act is wearing similar style clothes to that of your intended audience is also a helpful tool, as many people, both male and female, looked in magazines with fashion at the forefront of their intentions. After these main points, there are also the minor things which can affect the success of a magazine. Little things, like color schemes, if made mostly pink, can completely deter any male readers that may be interested in the content. The layout is also important, as the target audience I was looking at didn't want pages and pages of writing. They wanted a chatty, relaxed magazine which gave them all the information they wanted in a format that was enjoyable to consume. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the process from it to the final product? Starting with the front covers, even from a glance there are very obvious differences. But firstly, looking at the title of my magazines. For my preliminary task, I used the title of The Ridge, as this was relatable to the college's location. However, the font and coloring I think is too young for my target audience. This kind of color scheme is seen on magazines aimed at children ages 4 to 12. For my main task of creating a music magazine, I wanted my title and font to represent the student ages audience, so it needed to be more mature than this without subtracting from the fun, chatty elements of younger magazines. I think I have achieved this well in my main task. To improve it, I might make the title stand out more from the background. Moving on to the background, my preliminary task, I feel, much like the front, it is too young. The mix-up of bright colors make my magazine look unprofessional and ill-designed for the target audience. The background for my main task is a shaded tonal background mixed up with black and white. I really like the dark feel which it gives my magazine. This dark feel brings my music magazine into the target audience I am aiming for, as it is not plain like many specialized magazines, nor is the color too overpowering. Next, the photo. For my preliminary task is long distance. This means that eye contact cannot be used as effectively to interest readers. The photo on the front is also not compositionally very interesting and looks unprofessional. The models used in the first photo are not advertising the college, as I would want it to advertise it. The photo used on the front cover of my main task is, however, much better fitting. As the act I created is a double act, I was able to play around with Photoshop to create two different people from one model. One of the photos has very strong friendly eye contact used to interest the audience. To improve this aspect of my magazine, I would want my Photoshop skills to be better to make the actual construction of the photo more professional. After that, the headlines on the front page on my preliminary task follow the bright theme of the rest of the magazine. They are not very interestingly positioned or presented. Minimal information is shown, so the target audience are less likely to be drawn in. On the other hand, for my main task, I got the maximum amount of information into the front cover to interest more people in the subjects covered. I also avoided overcrowding, as this would do the opposite and deter my target audience. Next, looking at the headers. For my preliminary task, the header was a way to advertise extra parts to my media magazine which do not feature on the main section of the front cover. I think that the text and punctuation could be improved to make it feel more professional. However, the majority of college magazines do not feature a header. Moving on to the header of my main task. I think that this topper was more professionally designed and fits in with the look and conventions of the genre of music magazines. In music, magazines' header are a vital part to advertising. I think that this part of my magazine was done well. Moving on to the contents of my preliminary and main task. The title of my preliminary task is the same font as the title on the front cover, to create a house style. However, because it is not the same color, I think that this method of creating a flow is almost pointless until they are recognizably the same. Taking this into consideration, when making my main product, I decided that both title would be the same front and the same color and would carry as many similar traits as possible, like the positioning and size. I think that this has been effectively achieved in my magazine. Moving on to the background. The background of my preliminary task's front cover was recognizably similar to that of the contents. This is the same for my main task. I think that it is important to create the sense of a house style, because in doing so you are dramatically affecting the feel and tone of the magazine. If there is not a theme throughout these pages, then it is very difficult to create a strong house style and consequently a strong subculture. Next, looking at the page numbering. Straight away one can see that there is a dramatic difference in the numbering of the pages. In my preliminary task, the numbering was all in order, all on one list, and all no more than 3 pages long. I think that this style of layout is okay for a college magazine that has a main set focus on the college. However, this would not work if we applied this to music magazines, as there are too many areas to cover, all of different length and styles. For my main task, I decided that it would be better organized if there were subheadings which the pages were listed under. In summary, the transition from preliminary task to main task has been vast. Various skills have developed hugely. I feel I have not only developed my computer and media skills such as Photoshop, but also less teachable skills, like analyzing, understanding, perspective ripples caused by decisions and people's attitudes and relationships towards media. These are skills I have picked up through my own investigations into the media as a whole and magazines as a specification. I think that these skills that I picked up in planning helped me to appreciate how important little details are and how they can affect people's immediate feeling towards a media product. What have you learned about technologies from constructing this product? At the beginning of this media course, I knew very little about many of the technologies I have now covered fairly thoroughly. One of my skills which has come along most is Photoshop. I knew the basics of Photoshop, but never had the opportunity to explore it properly. Also in the process, I have learned about PhotoBucket, as I used this to display slideshows of photos which I have indeed never used before. Blogger is another media method which I had to pick up from scratch and manage to navigate. These technologies gave me the chance, power, and ability to produce media products which are somewhat close to the real thing, and to imitate being a producer on the internet. In the process of learning these technologies, I have also become more attentive when it comes to details of conventions. I started looking at magazines in a different way, paying more attention to the house style, positioning of images and text, fonts, and column size. These are all minor details in building up the sense of a realistic magazine. In the process of making my magazine, I came across several hurdles. This displayed to me, in the sense that I had never thought of before, how demanding and challenging it can be to be creative and arty in my designs. When experimenting with ideas, you have to use logic and knowledge of technologies to overcome apparent setbacks. It also came into light that even with all this advanced technology, old-fashioned sketches, brainstorms, and drafts are still vital methods in attracting target audience. I had also never used the program used to make this video, Windows Live Movie Maker. I think that this demonstrates how informing people with a fair amount of information can be much more effective with the use of technology, and can even be enjoyable for the consumer. And lastly, YouTube. Although I had been on the site, I set up my first account for this project. During this whole process, it has been a huge learning curve in many aspects. I know much more now than I did at the start. Consequently, my work could always be improved with more learning and more research. My work, although appearing finished, really will never be finished to the best of my potential without more time.